Can you hear me on your part?
Can you hear me? Yeah, maybe it's from my side.
Yes, now I
It's
can.
okay now?
Yeah, now it's perfect. Perfect. How do you do today?
Okay. Well, I'm just concerned. I'm doing fine, but concerned is actually one of the biggest issues now, not just for Africa, but for the world.
Definitely. Everyone is quite anxious about the situation in Mozambique, justifiably so. If you look at the makeup of SADC, Mozambique is just a neighbor of South Africa. And we know that in Africa, there's an abundance of resources, right? And one is asking himself, are these just sporadic terrorist attacks, or there are resource wars currently taking place in Mozambique? Before we go deeper into the conversation, please make an introduction into who you are and why is it that I felt you were the better candidate to host this debate with me.
Thank you for the opportunity once again. My name is Mohamad Yassine. I'm from Mozambique. I'm a political analyst. I was a former vice president of the International Affairs Committee at the Parliament for the last 5 years. Representing the SEDO African Union as a coordinator for Southern Africa on diaspora. And I'm also the executive director for Religion for Peace in Southern Africa. I'm one of the people outspoken about what's happening in Cabo Delgado for so many reasons. One of the reasons is that it started a while we at the Parliament were actually following the issue, which I'm sure that other people are following now, but it started while I was heading that committee.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that. And you're quite correct when you're saying the situation in Mozambique, especially for an outsider, it may be a bit of a confusing state of affairs. For someone who lives there, give us your sense of what has been happening from the time these insurgencies started.
Well, let's start by saying that for the last three and a half years, we started to see some movements in the northern part of Mozambique. We may call it insurgency, we may call it terrorism, we may call it jihadism, which I normally think that those are three different definitions when it comes to what's happening in Mozambique. One, we look at it as a result of internal division. I'm not talking about political division, but I'm talking about different levels of social division. Poor people and the richer people. And the second, it may be a result of a lack of opportunity for the youth in the province of Cabo Delgado. Likely, for the last years, Cabo Delgado became one of the most important regions in Africa because of what we have as a gas, which makes Mozambique one of the 4th largest reserve in the world. But normally this comes with a price. The first price is that wherever we have gas in Africa, we normally have problem, which becomes, we call it a gift, which comes with a higher price. And the second is that opportunities for the youth in Cabo Delgado is one also of the major problems. And then we may talk somehow about the radicalization in the same area. So we have Cabo Delgado as a compacted area where what is happening on that place is totally different from what's happening in the rest of the country. We have also drug trafficking in Cabo Delgado. And we also have human trafficking in Cabo Delgado. We have also the trafficking of one of the best resources that we have in Mozambique, which is wood. And we will also have ruby and gold in the same province. Let's say that province is blessed, but that blessing, it does not go to the people of Cabo Delgado. Being that also one of the reasons why we started to have that problem. Besides, it's good to mention that between Cabo Delgado and Tanzania, we have an open border. As to say that 70% of the border between Mozambique and Tanzania, it's an open border. It's very much different control who comes in and who goes out.
Mm.
When it comes to insurgency and terrorism, it's well known that in Central Africa, we have from Uganda, Congo, Kenya, Tanzania, and now Mozambique, which is actually the battleground, we have people moving, some people that they came from Somalia. As we don't have enough control on the borders, we don't control the trafficking of all those resources that I've mentioned. We don't have real government in place. Definitely, the problem is there. Is what we're facing today.
It's quite a tense situation. I know also that Total, a French energy giant, celebrated signing an MOU with the government of Mozambique, where they're going to be making liquefied natural gas. And from there on, then this spate of attacks started to increase. But let's look at the economic aspect of it. How do you feel that the halting of this project out of fear that these insurgents are going to destroy the infrastructure that's going to assist the economy of Mozambique? How do you feel that this has impacted the country?
Well, let's start by saying that Total has control in terms of what must be done when it comes to investing in Mozambique, especially on that area of oil and gas. But the main problem is Total cannot say that they can be safe in an area where, first of all, the resettlement of people was not well done. And actually people were settled to give space to Total. It's not possible to say that, okay, this investment can be safe while the majority of the youth from the same area, they don't have opportunities in terms of job. We cannot say that opportunity is well accepted for the people of Cabo Delgado if most of the revenue are understood that will be coming to Maputo, not to the province itself. So I also understand that although Total has all that investment in place, but let's look at the social environment within the project. That's what is lacking.
I hear you. And also it's very important. I think we've seen this challenge over the years where multinational companies come into the country with foreign direct investment, but there's little to no improvement that takes place at a domestic level. Some of it becomes just mere cosmetics or political rhetoric when these exchanges or MOUs are entered into, but people on the ground have a different view of what's currently happening. Also, one has said that there's over 60 billion rands, right, at stake, and $60 billion, excuse me, at stake regarding these. How do you then match these with the recovery the country was making from COVID lockdown to now these terrorist attacks? How is the two being managed currently?
Well, in a matter of fact, when it comes to Cabo Delgado, no one is talking about COVID. You cannot talk about COVID in an environment where it's unstable. People from Cabo Delgado cannot be tested now. As you can see, we have about 800,000 refugees now.
Wow.
In different provinces, people that came from Cabo Delgado. The number is mounting day after day. COVID is not an issue today in Cabo Delgado. People cannot sleep because they don't have shelter. People are running to the jungle in order to protect themselves. People don't have food. People are marching more than a week in order to be safe. So when we talk about the COVID, you can pull any kind of money that you want. It won't help Cabo Delgado today. As to say that even the central government does not think that Cabo Delgado today, the COVID is an issue, because it is not. No one is in Cabo Delgado and in most of the province of districts of Cabo Delgado speaking about COVID. There are provinces in Cabo Delgado that there's an absence of government. So which means that other sectors of the government, they're not there to implement any kind of program.
Quite scary. Also, there's the dynamic now, as you rightfully stated, regarding the porous border between Tanzania and Mozambique, but also hasn't these terrorist attacks also heightened the likelihood of human trafficking? What is your sense in terms of that?
Well, that's one of the points that I normally raise in my speech is that you have a province that is fertile when it comes to any kind of trafficking. You talk about human trafficking, for example, people that have been trafficked from Cabo Delgado, from Musimbo da Praia, for example, that go to Tanzania, from Tanzania up to Congo, to the mining sector, especially the children going to the mining sector. So you don't expect in a province that does not have borders that those kind of trafficking can be controlled. You have in Cabo Delgado that people are using the ports in order to introduce heroin and cocaine that goes back to Palma, and some of it goes back to Europe, and some of it goes back to South Africa. So as you don't have a control on that province, it's very much difficult to follow any kind of trafficking.
Quite scary indeed. I know that the United Nations Human Rights Commission had estimated that internal migration alone may around June reach around 1 million, meaning those 1 million people are internally displaced. Some have run away from their homes, and obviously life has halted essentially for them. And you introduced a very difficult dynamic where you're saying, how can people be tested or even be inoculated for COVID when one, they don't even have jobs, number two, there's no nutrition, and thirdly, there's a serious risk and threat to their lives. How do you see this playing out at the African Union level?
Well, I think before we go back to African Union, let's understand what exactly is happening in the region.
Please share with us.
For some reason, only this week we're capable to have SADC making certain decisions, which I, as an analyst of international affairs, I would say that that decision taken by SADC now on this meeting held now in Mozambique somehow does not help Mozambique today. Why is that? Is that African Union to intervene in any kind of support what is happening in Mozambique, it needs first of all to understand what exactly SADC is doing and what is lacking, right? And as SADC still hanging around when it comes to the major problem that we face in Mozambique, definitely we will not have support from any other structure, either being a continent or outside of the continent. If SADC is saying today that yes, in 21 days, we will send a team to Mozambique to analyze what exactly is happening, then I'm saying that we're wasting time. Because we've been into this for the last 4 years. What exactly SADC did? And again, let's not forget that SADC normally plays the silent diplomacy when it comes to the regional problems. Do we have enough structure in SADC in order to help Mozambique on this type of insurgency or in this type of terrorism? It's difficult to say, but we don't have. Then what's the next step? Can Mozambique look for other supporters in order to finish or in order to help us overpassing SADC? No, we cannot, because we have regional protocols.
Yes.
Then what exactly we're going to do? If you go back to SADC, in matter of fact, only 2 countries have a capability to face this type of terrorism, which is South Africa and Angola. Then can we go bilaterally to convince those 2 countries to support us before SADC taking a step? The response is not. Then we're in an angle that we cannot move.
This also leads me to ask this question. South Africa has an investment in Mozambique through Sasol, right? Sasol also is heavily invested in the natural resources sector, particularly for oil and gas. And now you have Angola, which together with Mozambique are ex-colonial clients or states of Portugal. Do you see Portugal coming in to say, I cannot allow my investments to be decimated by terrorists? On the other hand, we also have ExxonMobil from America. Do we see America from their AFRICOM base in Botswana coming in also to say we are protecting our interest here?
Well, the position of the government, as the president is speaking, is that we don't want so many different forces in Cabo Delgado. He even said, the president said days ago, that although SADC can decide wherever they're going to decide, he understands that only Mozambicans can intervene in terms of army. And now there's a point here, is that wherever there is an American investment, the United States allow themselves to intervene wherever they want. That is a common law from the United States since 1973. Another point is that Total is giving also an opportunity to create their own guards in order to protect the project. The point is, those two steps is exactly what we've always been avoiding. If we have the resources in Mozambique, the only way of controlling the resources is actually to have Mozambican troops protecting it. But let's go back to the African examples. We only have one example of locals protecting local investment, which is in Morocco. It's actually successful. Why is that? Morocco has created an environment where the people surrounding the investment themselves are controlling the investments. So which means that they're getting the revenue of the investment as the local people around the investment. And we actually went in a different way.
Mr. Yassine, I think your network has frozen you there. I'm not sure why. I think it's trying to connect us.
Are you there?
Oh, there we go. You just got disrupted there.
I was saying that
sure.
what we're having now as an opportunity for Mozambique in order to come out from what is happening there is either accept the opportunity that's given by the United States, which they're ready to intervene, but also Portugal, as you have mentioned, already sent a team of Marines in order to prepare Mozambican troops in order to face the insurgency. Yes, Portugal is one of the biggest funders in Mozambique. But as you mentioned, South Africa also has an interest. The point is South Africa going to intervene bilaterally or will follow SADC rules? I think that's the situation that we expect to see in the end of this month.
It's quite scary because when you consider the level at which these international players have converged on Mozambican soil and each one protecting their own interest, I wonder how much of a gap they are going to leave for these insurgents to zoom into other villages that are more prone to risk and are not yet as heavily guarded as, for example, Cap Delgado, right? And to this, I then ask the question, if South Africa does intervene bilaterally, how does it affect the stability of SADC as a whole?
Well, South Africa has a counter interest. It's a direct interest in Mozambique because of TESOL, right? So if we allow South Africa without a commandment from SADC, then we'll be making a mistake. As I said, South Africa, they have the interest of South Africa shall not overpass the decision taken by SADC. But before we have an example where SADC has mandated South Africa and Angola to intervene in Congo. It may happen that this time also, South Africa and Zimbabwe, probably and Angola, I have the mandate of SADC to intervene. But as our president is saying, he does not want foreign troops in the place. The thing that countries can help with intelligence, but not really sending troops into Mozambique.
What, from your own experience or what people have heard, is the current makeup of this terrorist outfit called ASJW fighters? What do you know about them? Are they in any way linked to ISIS? Are they in any way linked to Al-Qaeda? Are they in any way linked even to any of these terrorists that we've seen ravaging North Africa in the form of Al-Shabaab?
Well, my field of international affairs is the Middle East. I did my studies in the Middle East, and I'm a well-known of what is happening that side. And 3 years ago, I was in Iraq on a meeting where we were told that we will start to have insurgency in Mozambique. Let's don't forget that ISIS has been defeated in Iraq and is pulling away from Syria. And now we have a different type of ISIS from Congo, right? Even if you try to see the recent report given by the Americans, they're saying that Mozambique has been attacked by ISIS from Southern Africa. There is a footprint of ISIS in Cabo Delgado. There's a footprint of ISIS in Cabo Delgado. But I normally say that when it comes to terrorism, terrorists doesn't find heaven in any country if they don't have support for local people.
Yes.
The point is, how can local people support terrorists? I've been following the steps of this insurgency. Recently, I was in Zanzibar and I was in Mombasa, where the insurgency, in fact, that attacking Mozambique came from. So we're actually having a regional problem that it may look small, as in Mozambique now, but maybe tomorrow it will reach the golden land, which is South Africa.
Yes, true.
Yeah, so there we need to be very much careful. Remember in 2010, so there was a sign in South Africa that during the World Cup, we will have some attacks from insurgency.
Yes,
that was during. So what exactly avoids those terrorists go to South Africa in real terms?
That's a very good point. Also, when you speak of you're saying essentially there cannot be a terrorist outfit operating in a country without having enjoyed local support. To what extent do you feel that the radicalization of youth, owing from the idea that they are unemployed, perhaps they feel that the government doesn't have their best interests at heart, and economic opportunities are scarce, right? What do you feel is the degree to which they may feel radicalization is the way to go, and belonging to a terrorist outfit is the right form of revenge against a government they perceive to be not caring for them?
Well, I remember once our president was saying that the radicalization in northern part of Cabo Delgado, it was actually coming through one of the sheikhs from Kenya. Actually, sheikh from Mombasa actually is the one who started with radicalization. What I did actually, I followed the steps given by the president, and I went to Mombasa, the mosque of that sheikh, in order to understand. Well, you cannot radicalize people that have different type of opportunities. It's very much difficult. True. Second is that if we say that it's an Islamic radicalization, let's understand that in Cabo Delgado, the government did not intervene much when it comes to schools, education. So religion played that role. If you're saying today that the religion is radicalized youth, then what exactly you have to do is actually to counter the narrative
Yes.
to change that narrative in order to prevent violent extremism. But that will take time. What I'm normally asking is that for the last 3 years, where was the intelligence service in order to understand that things are happening in Cabo Delgado? Where was SADC? Where was African Union? Today, we can hear, for example, from the US telling us the leader of that group. Why? For the last 3 years, we kept saying that we still don't have a face. So everything is failing in terms of intelligence, not just in Mozambique, but in the region. We're waking up to a problem that it's bigger now. We're waking up to a problem that is no longer just a Mozambique problem. What stops the insurgents that they are coming from all those countries to cross to other SADC countries? Today we're asking, why is it that Tanzania is not cooperating? We all know that terrorism plays in a certain way. If you, as a country, contribute with other country to avoid the attacks of terrorism, that country definitely will come to your country. See what is happening with Boko Haram, for example, in Nigeria. Yes. Cameroon and Chad, they are still over of a local problem. Why? It's because they intervened. Look what is happening with Al-Shabaab in Kenya and Uganda. Kenya and Uganda, they're also been attacked because they're having troops in Somalia. So who dares to bring troops to Mozambique, knowing that it may open a door of a hell to their own country? That it needs to be understood in a different way. You've mentioned one particular point when you said about African, that African can come to help. Let's understand that the SADC position when it comes to African, it is that SADC does not allow African to operate and base within the region, which means that the decision taken by Botswana, it's an unilateral position that SADC is not involved. You can go back to what we call a zero road, which is the sea. Who's controlling the maritime of Mozambique today? It's France and India with the support of South Africa. So which means that even Mozambique as a country, we don't have the capability to control our own shore, let alone to control the entrance from where the major drugs from Pakistan and Afghanistan and Iran are coming from. The country is vulnerable, but also SADC is very much vulnerable.
And you mentioned a very critical point now where you're saying in the SADC region alone, there are 2 countries, Angola and South Africa, that may have the military might to offset the power of insurgents. When you look at the other exposed countries who are equally rich in mineral resources, do you feel that at some point we're going to see a trend? If we're now saying as far back as 2010, there were terrorist threats that South Africa heard about during the World Cup, right? But nothing obviously sufficed at that point. But now we're seeing it happening in Mozambique, and the threats are now such that the terrorists are saying, if you intervene as South Africa or as a SADC member state, we are going to also come to your country because you are essentially destabilizing our efforts and plans in Mozambique. Do you sense that this threat is going to perpetuate to a point where it becomes a regional crisis beyond just Mozambique?
Yeah, look, the absence of protection, it goes back, for example, to the borders we have with Malawi, for example. If the insurgents, they get a heaven in Mozambique, nothing stops them to go to Malawi and Zimbabwe, let alone Tanzania, because now we're saying that insurgency that crossing to Mozambique through Mtwara, Tunduru, Songeya. And now we have, for example, between Mozambique and and South Africa. The borders are vulnerable as well. So that threat shall not be for Mozambique alone. Mozambique, it may be used as the base to spread. Because as long as insurgency occupies space, I say most of the time that this group cannot be called Al-Shabaab for one reason, is that Shabaab is not an occupying space group. No. While this group occupies 7 districts. So, and they stayed there. They still have a port of Musimbo da Praia. Up to today, it's been more than 5 months. So it means that those groups, they're capable to create a different type of a social environment in those places where people will somehow, even forced to, they will join to the new rules of those groups, and unless they are being killed. And again, what kind of tools do we have to stop those groups of moving? We have none. You see, let me say that for the last 16 years, SADC is one of the most quiet place when it comes to internal problems from Africa. And that got us sleeping. And today, we don't have a regional power like ECOWAS, for example, has. We don't have. We're trying to bring back the defense structure of SADC. Let's not forget that if it comes to contribution, who's going to contribute financially to the defense sector in SADC? Definitely, it's going to be South Africa and Angola, because the 2 countries that they have somehow resources, financial resources. Does Malawi have? No. Zimbabwe is bankrupt. Tanzania, they will not do it. And Mozambique is in a struggle. Then who will contribute? Let us say that when it comes to international relations, we say countries are not friends, are based on interest.
Yes, true.
Yes, South Africa will come in because of the investment in Sasol. But what exactly that Kenya is taking back? What exactly can Angola can take back if they decide to intervene? Tanzania will not intervene. The fact is that while we have gas in Cabo Delgado, in Palma, we have the same project above in Tanzania. So if Mozambique is having a problem and Tanzania is not having, it's well done for Tanzania, business-wise, because that project will start first than the ones we have here. Not surprised that the late president of Tanzania has said once, if Mozambique wants Tanzania to put a hand on insurgency, then they need a share from the project.
Wow.
So economical ties as well plays also a role in what's going to be next in terms of SADC.
As we conclude this needful discussion, I want to look at the role of religion in the radicalization of youth. You know, some may say the fact that a sheikh in Mombasa in Kenya has been radicalizing youth either through social media platforms, right? And you ask yourself, what is the role of social media platform in curbing such radicalization? But at the same time, the freedom of religion or to associate with a deity or a persuasion that you want. Do you feel that at some point we're now going to be fighting, there's going to be a fight rather, or a pitting against of religion against people where perhaps Christianity as well as Islam are going to be coming together, and now the other is going to be saying you are the root cause of these terrorist insurgents, and the other will be saying, but you've also done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of enabling imperialism and colonization.
Well, you've mentioned a point here which it's very important. I know Kenya very well. One, and the second point is that yes, they share a mosque in Mombasa did radicalize their own people while it started in Nairobi.
Mm.
Of course, there is a common culture from Cabo Delgado, Tanzania, Congo, and Kenya, because there's a common language, which is Swahili. So definitely, illiterated people, they speak much Swahili than they can speak English or Portuguese.
Mm. Mm.
The absence of government structure when it comes to education in those places in Cabo Delgado helped the introduction of a different type of Islam. Yes, you don't have a regular school, but you have a madrasa.
Yes.
You have a religion school. So who is to blame? Today, we understand that yes, those madrasas, there were plenty, and they've been radicalized by those tapes or those webs from the Sheikh in Mombasa.